internet. Today I want to share what my top 10 to read in 2018 list is gonna look like. I did this challenge last year. I picked 10 books that I wanted to read this year. I'm still working on that list, but I thought it was okay to go ahead and make my list for next year because I've gotten to the point where I pretty much have an idea of what I'm going to finish reading this year, and these books are not going to be read this year, unfortunately, but they're all books that I really want to read. Some of them I've had for a really long time, some of them I just was really excited when I bought them and I just haven't gotten to them. Some of them are first books in a series that I really want to start, and this kind of gives me that push to get all of these read. So without further ado, let's get into the list. So the first book is the one that I have had for the longest. Really, it's one of the books I've had for the longest that is set unread ever, and that book is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit films, and I know that the book The Hobbit is very different from the movies because they somehow managed to make 3 movies out of this book, and there's no way they added a lot of stuff. But I really want to read The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings books, and I have been wanting to for a really long time, and I just need that push to do it because I feel like I'm really gonna love them. I've just never made the push to actually read them. So I figure I'll put The Hobbit on this list, and if nothing else, I'll read this next year, and maybe I can read The Lord of the Rings in the next year, or maybe I'll want to read them in 2018 too. Who knows? But this is the only one I have to read next year. And I'm really excited to finally dive into these books. Next book I have is Shatter Me by Tahereh Mafi. This is the first book in the Shatter Me trilogy, and I don't know a whole lot about the plot. I know that it's a YA dystopian. I know that Whitney from Woody Novels is like obsessed with this series, and it's very hyped on BookTube. So I think I want to go to this one not really knowing more than that, but I generally tend to like dystopians, so I feel like I'll enjoy this, and since Tahereh Mafi has announced that she's going to be adding more books to the series, I would like to be able to, you know, be a part of that hype once it starts. So in order to do that, I gotta start the trilogy. So at some point in 2018, I'm gonna be picking this baby up. Next on my list is Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I freaking love Victoria Schwab. She's amazing. I've read her Shades of Magic trilogy. I've read the Monsters of Verity duology. I've loved both of those. I just love her as a person, and I know that I'm going to love this book. I think this one is more of a science fiction book, more so than fantasy. I might be wrong on that, but I do know that as of right now it's a standalone, but she's finally going to expand and make this a trilogy, and I think the second book comes out next year. So as much as I've been wanting to read this for the past few months, I wanted to wait until closer to when the next book, Vengeful, comes out. I think she just finished writing it, so it'll come out probably later next year. I can't remember what the release date is, but I'm definitely going to read this to prepare for Vengeful because I want it fresh on my mind. I just know I'm going to love it. I've heard a lot of people say they even prefer this over the Shades of Magic trilogy, so I'm really pumped to read this. Next, I actually have a nonfiction book. And this is one that I have been wanting to read for a while. I've put it on many like readathon TBRs and I've just never gotten to it. I really want to read it. And that is I Am Malala. This is her memoir. It's supposed to be really good. Malala is an amazing person and I really want to read her memoir, and I haven't. But I know I'm gonna love it, so I decided to put it on this list. That way I will definitely read it next year. Next, I have The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the first book in the Raven cycle, which is a series of 4 books. This is super duper hyped on BookTube. I feel like a lot of people even lately have been either reading it for the first time or rereading it, and so it's been kind of getting hyped again. I know this is some kind of YA fantasy book. I'm not sure if it's fantasy or more magical realism, and I know it's about, I think, 4 boys and then a girl named Blue. That's really all I know. That's really all I want to know. I want to just be surprised, but I've heard that the writing in this series is amazing and that it's a lot of people's favorite series, so I'm really excited to start this series. The next book is a lot of people's favorite book, and that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This is an adult fantasy book, and I think it's about a circus that only runs at night, and I think it's supposed to be a romance. So I may read this around like Valentine's Day or something. But it's a pretty big book. It doesn't look like it, but it is, I think, over 500 pages. And so many people on BookTube say that this is their favorite book of all time. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. I hope that it isn't too hyped for me and that I end up getting kind of let down, because sometimes that happens and it always sucks. But I'm really excited to read this finally and understand what people are saying about it. Next, I have Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I have never read anything by Laini Taylor, but so many people on BookTube absolutely love her. They love this trilogy. They love her newest book, Strange the Dreamer. I really want to read this trilogy before I read Strange the Dreamer, but I've heard that Laini Taylor's writing is just magical, and I really don't know anything about the plot of this other than it's high fantasy, but I don't really want to. I have this whole trilogy and I just haven't started it yet, so next year's gonna be the year, guys. Next on my list I have Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken. This is the sequel to Passenger, which I read earlier this year, I want to say in March. And the first book is a historical fiction time travel story, and I really liked it. I just, for some reason, haven't picked up Wayfarer. I'm just never really in the mood for it, but I really want to read it because I really liked Passenger. I feel like I'm really gonna like Wayfarer, so I just kind of need that extra push to like make myself read it because I know I'm gonna love it. Next on my list is The Queen of the Tearling by Erica Johansson. This is another adult fantasy novel, and I have heard amazing things about it, particularly from Cece from Problems of a Book Nerd. All I really know about it is that it's about a princess named Kelsey, and I think that she's trying to fight to claim her throne or something like that, but I've heard that the first two books in particular are amazing. The third book I've heard mixed things on, but I'm really looking forward to reading this trilogy nonetheless. I want to get more into adult fantasy because I think that it's a genre I would really like, and I think this will be a good place to start, this and The Night Circuits. And the last book on my list for next year is Truth Witch by Susan Dennard. This is a YA fantasy series. There's only 2 books out so far. I think the third one comes out next year. But I've heard really good things about it, and I don't want to get too far behind in the series because I don't know how long it's going to be, because longer series are a lot more daunting to start, so I figure if I start the first book now, when there aren't very many books out in the series, it won't seem as intimidating later if I like them. So yeah, so those are the 10 books I'm planning on reading at some point next year. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these and what you thought of them, of course keeping those thoughts spoiler free. And that will be it for this video, and I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye!